Father loves us, man. And there's a story in there about a rich family, two brothers. One of the brothers stays home and does this thing. The other brother goes to the city and squanders his shit on hookers and booze. You know what I mean? Comes back tattered, all beat up, just like we were talking about. And the father accepts him in, man, throws the biggest freaking barbecue you could think of, kills the fattest calf and all of that, you know what I mean? And the brother is like, why? He squandered everything, you're going to accept him back. And yeah, whenever we turn around and turn back and get back on that path, I'm happier than I've ever been. It's so crazy. And it falls in line with AA too, giving it to God, letting your higher power take it, you know what I mean? And I've heard arguments to where they say that the Bible isn't relevant to these times, man, but it really, really is.
Yeah, so if you dived into why someone says that it's not relevant, it's kind of like when I hear someone say, I don't like AA because the first thing talks about being powerless. For example, it can just be talking about the allergic reaction, as in that chemical affects you differently than other people, which makes you powerless to how it affects you, right? So you don't have to take it to the moon and then reject the whole program. What is it you think people reject about the Bible? Is it some of the 10 Commandments, how they feel that they're not applicable to today or anything with the...
What's funny, I think a lot of people would subscribe to the 10 Commandments, you know what I mean? They're quite simple, pretty much boiled down morals. But where I think it comes in is, there's this idea of hypocrisy. We have science, and Apostle Paul talked about, nostra, that wisdom, this knowledge that pretty much taken over, a Greek area of Ephesus. Everybody was so enlightened. They were so smart. You know what I mean? They couldn't subscribe to of God being, that was his son. You know what I mean? Just like my son is part of me, that's what they're talking about. He is God. That's his, whenever that crucifixion happened and they say he took the sins of the world. I mean, it was really a powerful thing, and it's really hard for people to subscribe to because you see, I would say the Christians in the 70s. All right, let's just go with the Christians in the 70s. I don't know if you've ever watched, Detroit Rock City, and it's got the mom on there. She's got the cross and she's smoking Jeremy, and she's just this, fear. Our generation rejects it. You know what I mean? We don't like it. We are a smart generation. I mean, we are more wise. I would say we're wise to sniffing out hypocrisy. We're wise to sniffing out BS, and our pride kind of gets in the way of that. And we're like, oh no, this person said this, or another thing too is our morals have changed. Our ideas have changed, against homosexuality and such, and it's really hard for somebody, when you read some of those harsh, and nobody ever quotes the next verse after that part. Wives need to be submissive just as men need to be submissive to their wives, and you see a lot of things picked and cherry picked from scripture. Where if you don't read the whole thing, the context of it, you can make it mean whatever you want.
That's a great point. I got 2 points I want to touch on. One is, yes, I can really find anything in scripture to make it support basically whatever behavior I want.
It's like confirmation bias.
Discernment is extremely important, and be able to assess intention of the person you're talking to. Also, when we went back to, and I said, why do you think people might be rejecting the Bible? And it's one of from my own kind of studies and introspection on it, is the anthropomorphic projection of the vengeful God who will strike one down is the opposite of the God that Christ spoke of as the mercy and unconditional love. So trying to reconcile this discrepancy of the Old Testament and the New Testament is almost like a bipolar type of thing where people say, I don't believe any of this. I'll just go with nature because I can see that, or whatever.
Yeah, you got to think of it as a business, right? the owner of the company is ready to retire. His son is taking over, you know, and it was kind of a change in management, so to speak. Now we have this go between, you know what I mean? This person, because whenever he came down as Christ, you know, he was tempted, man, in every aspect of life. You got to think, these were working class people, man. These weren't just people living in tents, dude. You know, these were cities, man. I mean, Jerusalem was a booming metropolitan, you know, Ephesus, you know, these other major cities, and people worked. There was people liked to party, you know, there was prostitution. It was legal then, you know what I mean? And it was just one of those things where he was a man. He was tired. He got beat up too out there working. He was, you know, they talk about he was a carpenter, but you know, he worked, you know what I mean? He got hungry. He was weak, you know, he was taken on the mountain and tempted by the devil, you know, and so he knows what we're feeling, you know what I mean? It's that change.
That's a requirement to be able to relate and anchor in the presence of God in the human domain, to leave energetic footprints in the sand for all who seeks, right? Moving forward. You had to. It was required.
It's, you know what I mean? It can be done. And see, since having that experience of being a man, you know, and what we go through on the day to day, and just by girls walking around in yoga pants, I mean, temptation, it's bait, my man. You know what I mean? What is your bait? You know, for me, it was really everything. And, you know, the women, the feel good, you know, people were drinking wine then, you know, now we just have a few more, we have a bigger selection, you know what I mean? We're humans, you know, we're subject to the human condition, you know, during that time when God was man, you know, solidified a different relationship with us, you know, it's where we're allowed to mess up. We're expected to mess up. What do we do about it? We clean up our side of the street, you know, that action needs to happen, you know, whenever you go through the Gospels, you know, and especially, I'm sorry, just the Gospels. Whenever you go through the Gospels, you know, you hear about these miracles that Jesus performed. Look after the miracle. That person every single time had to perform some type of action. That man that he spit in the dirt and put the clay on his eyes, he had to go wash his eyes in the river. The dude that was cured of leprosy, he had to wash 7 times in the river. You know, what if he quit on the 6th one? You know, what if he said, nah, you know, this is crazy. You know, that man's crazy. I'm not going to believe, you know what I mean? And every single miracle, you know, when they hear the crippled dude on the steps, take up your bed, it's right after that person performed some kind of action out of faith. In my life and in my experience, some days, man, I could take on the world and I'm like, God is me and you, man. And I would never. And then that Friday comes and I got a pocket full of cash flow and here I am. And wow, I've did it again. I've done it again, you know. And
these patterns, these addictions are extremely powerful, and it takes devotion to the Most High to do it. And that's it, man.
100%, man. 100%. And I think that's a good place to stop right here. Actually, it's well said, man.